Greetings, my name is Lena Ramos Gonzaga from BSED English 2A, and this is my digital teaching demonstration for English 5, subject Intensive English Language Proficiency. Good morning, students! I kindly ask all of you to stand and let us invite the Spirit with a prayer to guide us throughout our lesson. Amen. How's everyone? Are you doing well? That's great to hear. Okay, before we start, kindly pick up any underlying or laying trash on the ground and fix yourselves and chairs while you're at it. Are we good? Okay, now take your seats. Where is our class monitor? Okay, are there any absentees for today? None? That's good. Class, it is really important that we won't miss out on any of our classes because it is for your own benefit of improving your English communication skills. Am I understood? Okay. Now, to ease and lighten, we're going to have our icebreaker activity called Just a Minute. I will provide a couple of words and phrases that will serve as our topic, and in just a minute, you will be sharing your insights and your opinion towards the chosen word or phrases. Okay? Are you ready? Okay, let's start. Let's start from you, Cheska. Can you share about your work and school experiences? Okay? Now that is great to hear. And by the way, you can use and apply your English learning in speaking with your peers or your classmates, even outside the classroom, or speaking in English while talking to your friends. Now, English is not just confined in academics, but it is used in the workplace as well. Hence why it is important you will increase your skill set in English speaking or English proficiency skills. Okay? Now, moving on, Harvey, can you share about your hobby? Excellent. I can see that you are all practicing. Now, I have here a picture and I want you to describe it based on your own understanding. Yes, Jeremy. Okay. Now, we have learned about the communication model, and as a reminder, we have to look back and remember the parts of it. Now, let's start with this one. Can you name the parts of the communication model? Yes, Princess? Nice work. Now, how about this one? Yes, Kaloy? Okay, nice work. And this last one? Yes, Kyle? Okay, nice work. I can see that you have truly understood what the communication model is and the importance of communication. Now we can move on with our next topic, which is about formal and informal communication. So do you have any idea what formal or informal communication is? Yes, Jeremy. Okay, nice work. Formal communication is structured and official, while informal communication is more casual and spontaneous. Now, what are your experiences and usually where those formal and informal communication takes place? Yes, Princess. Okay, thank you for all of your ideas. Now, to further understand and be familiar with our lesson, let us proceed with our activity called speed networking. Now, networking is a term that is used as a process of building and maintaining relationships, connects with opportunities, and exchanging information to gain support. Now, in this activity, I want you to imagine that you are in a business gathering or an event where you are going to introduce yourself and introduce a product for a short duration in time, and engage in small talk. Now, in this conversational activity, it will be done by pairs. So, I want you to find a pair in this activity. Are all of you in pairs now? Okay, that is great. Now, the first person will be talking about soda and will use informal language in this conversation. While the other person will talk about, the other person will talk about chips using formal language in this conversation. Am I understood? Again, the first person will talk about soda using informal communication. Now, the second person will talk about chips and will use formal communication. Am I understood? Am I clear? Okay, are you ready? Let's start. Okay, clap your hands for a job well done. Okay, now I have some questions for you. What are the challenges have you encountered during the activity? Yes, Kaloy? Okay. Now, what are the strategies have you applied while conversing with your partner? Yes, Princess. Okay. The next one is, did you have a hard time switching from formal or informal conversation? If yes, then how? Can you describe it? Yes, Kyle. Okay. Last one is, what do you think the importance of knowing when to use formal language and informal language? Yes, Gemini. Okay. Great job. You did well in our speed networking. And I know that even though we haven't fully discussed it yet, you applied your English skills. So I want you to clap your hands with that. Okay. Now, to fully grasp our lesson, I'll be discussing formal and informal communication. Now, informal communication, it is a communication which information flows through formally and orderly. It is commonly used in academia in the workplace. And some examples of usage of formal language and formal communication is in papers. For example, in research papers, we are using formal language or formal communication. And other examples of this are resumes. When we apply to work, when we write our resumes, it is in informal language and we are interviewed by our employer. We use formal communication. Lastly, when we write our letters in cover letters or in our application letters, we use formal language. Now, formal language do not use colloquialisms and generally use third person pronouns. Moving on, informal communication uses informal language, which is the common or everyday language. It includes slang words, figure of speech, and idioms. And we're going to tackle every other. We're going to tackle some examples of informal language later on in our lesson. Now, informal communication, it is casual and continually changing, meaning it is not constrained on the rules that is set grammatically. When we talk to others, we usually don't care if we are grammatically correct or not. And obviously, now with the rise of social media, informal communication is commonly used in social media and text messaging. Now, some differences of formal language and informal language are this. Formal language are carefully edited in communication, meaning before we say a word, it is completely and accurately well thought of. And in informal language, it is impromptu, meaning it is spontaneous and it is used in everyday communication as well. In formal language or formal communication, we use it in academias or in official contexts. We can see it in our laws, in our constitution, in our formal textbooks, um, in our syllabus or in our lesson plans, while in our informal language, it is used in everyday communication or in text form, in messenger, in social media, in posts, and in Twitter. Usually in Twitter, they use informal or slang words. Next is that in formal communication, we avoid the inclusion of emotion or ideas. We don't necessarily say, I'm sad, you're using formal communication. We avoid or generally avoid emotionally laden words. While in informal communication, the inclusions of emotions are generally required because while we are using informal communication, empathy is usually present. Lastly, formal communications uses sentences that are complete, meaning they have a clear subject and verb. While in informal communication, it is usually phrasal, meaning you can understand the person while they just say FR, meaning for real, acronyms, slangs, and etc. Their sentences are incomplete, meaning it lacks a verb and a subject. Now, we're going to discuss some examples of informal communication. First of this is jargon. What is jargon? Jargon is the specialized or technical language of a specific group or profession that may not be understood by outsiders. Now, have you had any idea of what a jargon is? Yes? A great example. Now, jargon is used in a profession. It is considered an informal when some person do not understand what you're talking about. For example, the word coding might be understood by in the computer programming field by an act of having to write an algorithm. While in doctors, when you say coding, it will be not the same meaning. It will be informal if you will going to use it when someone would not understood the words that you're talking about. So here are some examples of jargon. First is blue sky thinking. It means a creative idea that doesn't always have a practical application. The next is the helicopter view. It means that it is an overview of our job or project. Next is think outside of a box. While it is commonly known, think outside of a box meaning it is don't limit your thinking. Think outside of a box meaning use your creativity and explore other solutions in solving the problem present. Now next is colloquialisms. Now colloquialisms are informal because it is a word that varies from region to another region. Examples might be the words want to might become wanna or the word going to might become gonna. Usually colloquialisms are informal because it is not always grammatical. First example is that the words you all. You all in West America and Texas might be pronounced as y'all. And it might be misunderstood by some persons or some people. So it might be wise not to use it in formal communication. Moving on, slang refers to the informal words that are used within a certain groups of young adults and teens. Now, it might in it might be important to remember that slang varies from one generation to another generation. An example of this was the word cheesy. An older generation might find the meaning of cheesy as romantic as sweet, but the newer generation might deem the word cheesy as cheap or tacky. Another example of this is a slang from Gen Alpha meaning skibbity. Skibbity means bad, okay? And obviously do not use it in formal papers because you might be not understand by your teachers, by your by your pros or by your classmates as well. Now generally slang is not bad because it is a way of having fun in communication. But do remember that when you use a slang, make sure that the person that you are talking to means and understood the meaning of the slang that you're going to use. Now, the next is idioms. Idioms are expressions of figures of speech in everyday speech, but it is it is somewhat of a tricky one because second language learners might not understand what you're talking about, because idioms are generally words that have no connection with that meaning at all. The common idiom that we know is the phrase, "It's raining cats and dogs." While figuratively it means it's raining heavily, but for a second language learner which is unfamiliar with the language itself, it may be hard to understand what you're saying. Now, it's important to remember while you're using idioms, it is important that you know that the person that you're talking to understands the idiom that you're going to use. Now, the next are cliche. Cliche is a once clever word or phrase that has lost its impact through overuse. Cliches are sometimes even seen as a symptom of lazy communication. Symptoms of lazy communication in such a way that it is overused. When you use a cliche, you might be seen as cheesy, but it just means that you haven't bothered to search for original words to convey what you're trying to say. An example of this is the phrase, "no pain, no gain," or "there's plenty of fish in the sea." And the last example of informal language is text speak. Now, text speak is the language which is people use in conveying or writing their text messages. Now, text speak is just fine in personal life, but is in unprofessional, and considered inappropriate in academic assessments and most of your communication in the workplace. Students, I hope that you understood that text speak is inappropriate from essays and research paper, but the words and grammars that you use in text speak might not be appropriate while we are constructing formal essays and formal contents in our papers. So, on our classroom, you can use text speak while we are talking to our classmates informally, but formally, you shouldn't use it. Now, have you understood our lesson about formal and informal language? Okay. Have you had any questions? Clear? Okay. Now that you have understood our lesson, let's apply our learnings for activity called, did you say match? Now, in this activity, I want you to be grouped into 4. Okay, now group into 4 in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, done. Now, in these groupings, you will be given a scenario that you will act out, whether it is a professional or a casual situation. Now, you're expected to use appropriate vocabulary in a certain type of conversation. Now, you can use our examples that are given earlier, or you can use some examples that you know. Now, it's important to think about if the scenario calls for a casual conversation or informal language, or the situation calls for a formal language or formal conversation. Am I understood? Okay, you'll be given 15 minutes to prepare, and you will have 5 minutes to present your conversation. Am I clear? Am I understood? Now, you will prepare in 15 minutes, and you will present in 5 minutes. Okay? Let's start. The timer starts now. Excellent! You have applied formal or informal language in the scenarios, and you are able to identify which situation calls for a casual conversation or a formal conversation. It is important for you to understand when and how to use formal language because it avoids miscommunication in the workplace, in school, and even in everyday communication. And I want you to apply it wisely. Remember that not all of us can understand the meaning when we use figures of speech, when we use slang, or when we use formal communication. Some might think that you are unattainable or you are of higher ranking. And obviously, we use formal and informal communication when we are talking to someone. Depends on the context. When we're using informal communication, we're commonly talking with our friends. When our teacher talks to us, obviously, we use formal communication for respect. Okay. Now, to test your understanding, let's have our quiz. Now, our quiz will be accessed through this link, and you may pause the video while answering this quiz. And you may play it once you are done to check your understanding. Am I clear? Okay. Answer it in 3, 2, 1. Okay, great job. Are you done? Let's check. Here are the answers for the quiz. Okay, I hope that you truly understand what formal and informal communication is and how important applying the right language in words in the context that you are in. To reinforce your learning, this will serve as your assignment and also you can access it through this link as well. Okay, are there any questions? Any violent reactions? Is it all clear? Okay. Thank you, everyone, and see you in the next meeting. Goodbye. Thank you.